Hi, I'm Jessica Hopper. I'm an author, producer, and director. And for Kickstarter's Women Creator Spotlight, I am talking to Francesca Cavallo, the founder of Undercats, and also the woman behind one of the most successful, legendary Kickstarter campaigns in history for the book, Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls. Thank you for being here with me, Francesca. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me, Jessica.
First, I want to ask why it was important for you to make, let me ask this question a little bit more succinctly. Okay. In Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls, it features very specifically, as it says, unconventional women. Why was it important for you to feature unconventional women, and what is unconventional to you?
When Elena Favilli and I started working on Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls, we wanted to create the book that we hadn't read when we were little girls. So we wanted to put out in the world a book that celebrated the women who had defied the conventions of their time and had created a life of adventure for themselves. So probably one of the reasons why many of these women are unconventional is that it has been incredibly hard for women in history to take their destiny into their own hands because they've had to challenge society's expectations, in some cases their family's expectations and rules and laws in many cases in order to fulfill their dreams. So part of the invitation that Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls contained was to not be afraid of being a rebel, of turn the world upside down if you need to do that in order to fulfill your dreams and to create a life for yourself, for your family, for your community that is not there at the moment.
Your book really made a lot of space for other books like that to really come in its wake. You know, one of the incredible things about that your book does is that, you know, it really spoke to an underserved audience of both parents who want something outside this, you know, traditional princess mold to read their daughters or their children, and also something where girls and young women and young people can see themselves in those unconventional people. And I'm wondering, did people tell you when you wanted to do this, did people tell you like this book can't exist or there's not call for this book or this book won't sell? Like what sort of headwinds did you meet around it? Did people believe that this could be a success?
Well, the thing is that we didn't give anybody, if I'm honest, the opportunity to tell us that the book couldn't work, because we had a couple of experiences with traditional publishing before Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls and hadn't been particularly satisfied in the way the relationship with the publisher had played out. So when we started working on Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls, we didn't pitch it around and sort of to gather feedback from traditional publishers before going to Kickstarter. We decided from the get-go that we were going to try and create this book in a way that was unconventional. In other words, we wanted the book to be rebel, not just in its content, but also in the production strategy. We wanted it to go outside of what was expected for the production of a book. And I believe that created an aura around the book, that even the people that didn't know that this book got started on Kickstarter, somehow they could feel that it was different in a way. And part of the reason was also that, for example, when I remember that when we were almost done because we finished the campaign in May of 2016, and we had promised our backers that they would get the books in time for Christmas, and we wanted to maintain our word, our promise to them. So it was very rushed, the production, and we worked day and night. We wanted to deliver a delightful book, and we didn't have a lot of time. So I remember that through the finish, we were very close to the finish line, and we hired an editor that was from a very well-known publishing house, had worked there for decades, and so she was a very structured person, and she almost destroyed the book. She said that what we were doing didn't make sense, that we couldn't mix this genre of biography with the genre of fairy tale, and it was a very scary moment because we were like, we have never published a book before, but we feel very strongly that this is how this book should be. We want these stories not to read as biographies, we want them to read as fairy tales. We have chosen that the style that we want these stories to be written in. And so at that point, we sort of undid all of the work that this person that had a lot of experience had done. And we started over with another editor, even though we didn't have a lot of time, because we felt that the book that we wanted to put in the world and the book that the backers had trusted us to make was not the one that was sort of expected from a person that had worked for her entire life in traditional publishing. And if we hadn't had the trust of our backers, I believe it would have been a very tough call. But we were like, okay, so many people from around the world, they trusted us and they want the book that we have in mind, not the book that another publisher has in mind. So let's try to do it and let's see what happens. And and it went well. But it was a very, very exciting adventure that was changed in its nature by virtue of the fact that we had the complete freedom that a direct relationship with our backers gave us.
I really love how that anecdote underscores even the purpose of the book. You know, that here comes this person from, you know, kind of a really conventional publishing background, and they come in and they try to tame your book. It sounds like you have a lot of people that you have, or just a few people that you trust and collaborate with or have collaborated with. How do you know if someone is the right collaborator for you? How do you know that someone is the right person to bring into your creative endeavor? How do you know that?
You don't. You start collaborating with them and you see what happens. I've had tons of collaborations that didn't end well, and many that actually turned into years-long collaboration. There are people now that are in my creative team and that have been like for 12 years, 13 years. So the thing is that by creating lots of things, you have the opportunity to collaborate with lots of people. And that's actually another opportunity that was unlocked thanks to the rebellious nature of the experience of publishing through a direct relationship with your audience. Because as a writer, you don't get the opportunity to collaborate with graphic designers, with illustrators, with book producers, because usually what you do is you turn over your work, your words, to the publisher, and then it's the publisher who manages all of this stuff. But because I was, you know, with all of the books that I published, first with Rebel Girls and then with my new company, with Undercats, with Kickstarter, that gave me the opportunity to collaborate with lots of other artists from all over the world, because I created this book from cover to cover. So when I started working on a book, I don't just think about the story. I think about the object that people are going to have in their house. And if you have that kind of mindset, it is very hard to work with traditional publishers, because that's not how it works, because it's the publisher's work to decide what cover your book is going to have. You have some say, but you don't have control of that. So part of the reason why I've always been very excited to build a direct relationship with my readers is that gave me the opportunity to try things that would have been hard to try within a traditional publishing relationship, which I've had in like some other cases with other books, with books that are like from licensing deals with other countries. But it's never been quite as fulfilling, because you don't get to see if your vision works or not, because your vision is sort of diluted because you have to compromise with the vision of the publisher, with some limits or considerations that other people do. So you don't have the opportunity to build a team around your project, which you do if you have full responsibility and full control of the creative project from A to Z.
What is it that made you realize that you could really be a very hands-on DIY person in your, professional pursuits? And how much of that is informed by your activism?
There was never a time where I felt that I could sort of expect to fit into an existing box. I am a queer woman, I am a lesbian, I come from a small town in southern Italy. I came to the US with an accent that is much stronger than the one you're hearing now. So the odds were not in my favor. And for lots of the things that I created in my life, I've always had a very clear understanding that there was no one who was waiting to hear what I had to say. So, and that there were no sort of venues that were ready for an audience to come. That if I wanted an audience to come to my stories, to my events, to my creations, I had to build the venue. I had to build the opportunity for my books to be seen. I had to sort of create not just the product, but all of the steps for people to come to the product that I wanted to create. And of course, it is tiring and it takes a lot of time. It is also an incredibly empowering experience, because it means that we have the chance as creators who come from minorities, who are marginalized in society. We have the opportunity to create our own venues, to create our own platforms, and that we do not have to wait to be invited by the people who are the gatekeepers. Because if I had waited for the gatekeepers to invite me, I would have stayed on the sidewalk for my entire life. And I didn't want to stay outside. I wanted to meet people, because it's always been important for me to put my stories in front of people, to give them the opportunity to hear what I had to say, because I've always thought that what I had to say was important. So I tried my best, and I still do. I mean, even after, when you are part of a marginalized community, when you are interested in talking about certain themes, it's not like even selling millions of copies of your book will not open as many doors as people think, unless you sort of decide, okay, I will give you what you want, which is more of the same, please, so we can make money off of you. because people don't necessarily want to sort of back your artistic journey, even if you have proven that it can be successful. So if you want to stay true to yourself and to keep on exploring rather than just exploiting what you have found, you have to keep on creating the places where people can enjoy your work. You have to keep on creating the streets, the roads that take people to your work. So you don't just do the work, but you create the conditions for people to meet whatever it is that you're doing.
That's all tremendously powerful. What was the media, the films, the books, whatnot, that showed you as a queer artist, as a queer woman, as a creator, the power of reading a story or the power of media that speaks to you and who you are, or represents you and who you are? What were the things that informed your sense that was really phenomenally powerful?
When I was in the Academy of Dramatic Art in Milan, I found out about the Dresden Dolls and about Amanda Palmer. And she was one of the first musicians to crowdfund her music, but she didn't just use crowdfunding as a tool to raise money, but she had an entire philosophy around the art of asking, which was also the title of her TED conference, and the book, a very inspiring book that she wrote about relying on your community and giving your community the power to believe in your work and to support it if they think it's important. And I loved how she highlighted the fact that when you put yourself in the position to ask, you are making yourself vulnerable. And you are, of course, I have run campaigns that have been wildly successful, and I've run campaigns that have been less successful. And of course, it's more, you are happier when your campaign is wildly successful, and you are a little less happy when the campaign is not incredibly successful. But with each of these experiences, you learn something about yourself, and you learn that in the world of art, when artists are managed by agents and they go through the hoops or the traditional art production, be it music, be it literature, what have you, you're always busy to create this fiction that your career can only go up. That if you've written a New York Times bestseller, a book that has sold millions of copies around the world, the next thing you do will be bigger. And the one after that will be even bigger. And of course, that's not how it works. And sometimes people don't like crowdfunding, they don't like asking, because when you ask for help, you may receive a no. And you may have to go back and rethink the project that you were presenting to your audience. Or you may have a result that is different from what you were expecting. So part of what I loved about the Amanda Palmer's book was the fact that she was so honest about her journey as an artist. And she was not pretending that she was this big star and that nothing and no one could take her down. Because when you start doing that, I believe you lose yourself and your ability to stay in touch with your soul as an artist. And you just become a product for somebody else to exploit. So this was a book that radically changed my relationship with art and with making art and with the economics of making art.
What is your relationship with failure like? Do you find it instructive or do you fear it?
Of course I fear it. Who doesn't? But one thing that I learned about failure is that for example, when I write books, so mainly for me, failure is I write a book and no one buys it or no one reads it. And we tend to attach to failure a lot of fears because we are afraid that people are going to think, oh, I don't know, Francesca Cavallo is not a good writer, or the Francesca Cavallo is not a good writer as we thought she was. And we think that lots of people are going to think about us and about the fact that we failed. But the reason why we fail, at least in my field, is that probably the thing that we wrote didn't interest as many people. So the point is that people usually notice our successes, but they don't notice our failures. And that's the reason why they become failures. So I find that idea very reassuring because I'm like, okay, I can try to do more things. And usually people will remember only the things that work best. And this is the reason, by the way, why lots of people are convinced that Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls is my first book. And it was my 7th. But the first 6, no one noticed that I had written them. So everybody thought that this was an overnight success, but it wasn't.
Given the long road to Goodnight Stories, what did you learn from having this pretty massive success years into your career?
I learned that in order to get there, to get to the point where we created Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls, one of the things that were most important to resist, even if we were not making any money and we were unable to make the company sustainable, it was that I really loved my job. I didn't do it out of some sense of martyrdom or sacrifice. I did it because every day I woke up and I did work that I absolutely loved. And I didn't want that to stop. That was the thing that sustained me through all of those years. And frankly, is the thing that kept me going even after I left from Rebel Girls. And I was afraid because I was like, what if I do other things and they're not as successful, what do I do? But then there was a very brief thought because I was like, well, but I love this job and I love keep on trying to tell kids stories that can be important for them. So why should I let the fact that I was successful stop me from keeping on doing this job at the best that I can?
With founding your new company, Undercats, and making things like podcasts as well, why is it so important for you to bring things that are, I don't want to say like useful, but things that can really empower young listeners and young readers to think about their world and also to meet their interests where they are? I'm really curious where that, I don't even want to say like a belief in children's intelligence, but as a mom and as someone who spends a lot of time in the library with my kids and a lot of time helping them pick out whether it's their graphic novels or if I come across a podcast that's appropriate for them to listen to. But there's so much of this world that assumes children are not capable thinkers in a way, I think. And I think so much of what you make really reaches into children's intelligence and desire to have their curiosity sated. And I'm just wondering where your knowledge and belief in children's intelligence, where does that desire to meet that come from in you as a creator?
From the very beginning, I've always been sort of drawn to this idea that children are not citizens of the future, as many people call them. Children are citizens of the present and should be treated as such. I am drawn by the fact that they are the most vulnerable category of people walking on Earth, and it's important to hold space around them to let them experience the world in a way that honors their heart, their intelligence, their ability to feel that they are part of the world and they have a right to sort of not only understand what goes on around them, but to propose ways to change it, to improve it. So what I try to do with my stories is, on the one hand, I try to break the cycles of oppression that are passed on from generation to generation. And I believe that stories are a great opportunity to do that, because lots of the oppression that we interiorize passes through the stories that we read, that we see on TV, that we are told when we are kids. Based on stories, we create our expectations of what our role in the world can be. So I try to tell kids stories that hold space for them, and that show them that the world around them was created by people, and they are people as well, and they can change it if they don't like it. And part of the reason why I love writing stories for children that help them sort of get an understanding of the world around them is also because I am an activist, and I believe in trying to give my contribution to create a world where equality truly matters. And in many cases, the most radical revolutions that we can plant seeds for are the revolutions that start with children and with their way of looking at the world. So it is part of, the desire of giving children the tools to change the things that don't work in this world, to change to remove the obstacles to equality, to remove the obstacles that stand in between us and social justice. And when I work with kids and when I see a kid smile because they can find a seed of truth in one of my stories, that is one of the most fulfilling things in the universe for me. It's literally the reason why I wake up every morning.
Incredible. Francesca, thank you so much for talking with me today. It's been an honor.